morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yesterday, I played a video of the South African lawyer who was part of Chamisa's team that challenged the 2018 presidential election results. One of the things that the lawyer said was that 9 polling stations in the Bulawayo area had identical results. But we'll just focus on the 16 that were mentioned in the constitutional case, in the court itself, during the hearing. On this video clip, I'll just focus on that particular issue, although it covers other issues.
And then there is the issue of identical polling results. There are at least 16 polling stations with identical results. Identical results for Chamisa, identical results for Mnangagwa, identical spoiled votes. And in all those places, Mnangagwa not only wins, but wins big. It's like a kid was playing with the figures. That, with respect, is not how an election is conducted.
We'll now give the opportunity to Mr. Kanengoni.
The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission cannot be taken to task to say, why is the voter turnout in my central at this particular level and not at that particular level? Voters behave the way they do. No one knows why. Maybe behavioral scientists may be able to answer the question if they study it.
Mr. Kanengoni, there's the averment that several polling stations showed identical results.
And the simple point we make is that there's no need to be theoretical about it. We have the returns. This is something that happened. We show you the returns. And we've put the returns for 2 of those polling stations here to illustrate the point.
You say it happened?
Yes.
But in his presentation, Mpofu says it's actually 16 polling stations where the identical results. You heard it?
Yes, we did. Even in the affidavit, they put a bit more of the polling stations there. But we chose this to illustrate to the court. But for the rest, it did happen. It did actually occur.
We'll now go back to the applicant. Why go for speculative conclusions of manipulation?
The point that I wish to make.
I think that is an important point. Just to explain to some people who may not be familiar with the conduct of elections. People will go to a polling station, they will vote, there will be the SEC officials there, there will be the representative of all the candidates, election agents, will be in the polling station to witness the process itself from beginning to end. And at the end of the counting, all the material that were used, including a copy of the V11, will be put in the ballot box, and then it will be sealed. And all the participants, including the SEC officials, the agents of the various candidates, will put their signature on it, on the seal. The law is very clear. Once that ballot box has been sealed, it can only be opened with a court order if there should be a dispute in the electoral process. And this is exactly what the Chief Justice was referring to. If you doubt that 16 polling stations had identical results, which is highly improbable, in an election where there are roughly the same number of voters, 500, the probability that out of 1,000 polling stations, in this case here 11,000, 2 polling stations will have identical number of people who turn up to vote. It's highly probable. But if you were to say the same number of voters cast for each one of the candidates, say when the turnout has been, say, 200, the probability of that happening starts to diminish. But if you're going to say, in this case here, we had 11 presidential candidates. Each one of the 11 candidates will have exactly the same number of votes in each of the 2 stations, polling stations. The probability of that is very low. It's even lower. And it keeps on reducing the more stringent measures you introduce. And in this particular case, to have 16 polling stations with identical results, where 2 or more had identical results, is highly, highly improbable. And to add on top of that, one of the candidates in all the cases of the 16 was not only winning, he was winning big. That's Emerson Mnangagwa. I think the probability of that is diminishingly low to the point where you can say it's impossible. So we've got to look at other possible explanations. One clear possible explanation here is that the polling stations with duplicate entries, what could have happened is the V11 of one polling station comes in, and it is realized that this one here, Mnangagwa is winning big. And so instead of it being just entered once, it is entered twice. And if we go by the lawyer from South Africa, to have 9 polling stations with exactly identical polling results, that means that V11 was used 9 times. One possible explanation is that, yes, there were 9 different polling stations, but instead of using the V11 returns of the 8, where Mnangagwa maybe was not winning well, doing well, they used the one where he was doing the best to boost his number of votes. The other possibility is that the other 8 polling stations did not even exist. But all that is speculation. The law said each polling station must have a sealed ballot box where all the materials for the voting were kept. So here, the speculation would have ended by saying, okay, let's go to all the 16 polling stations with identical results. You cannot dispute that point. That was indeed exactly the purpose of saying the ballots must be put in a ballot box and sealed. And in case of a dispute, a court challenge like this one, we can go to the original material. What happened next is what is the key issue here. Let's just listen to what happened next.
Is that this is evidence of manipulation by ZEC after the process. Now, if you go to what they call the primary data, you're going to see manipulated data. So the applicant cannot ask a court to open residue which has already been manipulated. If you go to the residue, you will drink from a poisoned well.
That is an amazing argument. Unbelievable. The whole purpose of saying you must seal all the material relating to that election process in a ballot box is that if there is a dispute, like in this case, you do not speculate, you go to the source, to the sealed box. Let's have a look at what is inside. And for the applicant to be the one who's saying, don't open it. Beggars belief. What we are seeing here is what I've been saying before. That we have got an opposition that has been Zanupf in all but name. Zanupf Team B playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. And this is one example of that. One of the individuals who responded to my video yesterday had this to say regarding Chamisa's lawyer's response. As far as he was concerned, Thabani Mpofu had a good case, but was too emotional. I totally reject that argument. This has nothing to do with being too emotional. If he was genuinely interested in proving that the elections were stolen, why would you say you don't want the smoking gun? Opening the sealed ballot boxes would have been the smoking gun. If the duplicate polling stations were fiction, then there would have been no sealed box, because you cannot duplicate a polling station with all the material, with all the officials, because when you come to open it, those who were involved will be expected to turn up in court and agree that the seal that they placed has not been tampered. The signatures that are on the seal are their signature. You cannot duplicate that. If the V11 if the polling stations did exist, but the V11 for one station was used, or the results of one station was used, and the others ignored, then when you open the sealed box, it will show that the results in there and what you entered are totally different. That is the smoking gun. Why would the lawyer, the applicant, say they don't want the smoking gun? The conclusive evidence that the elections were stolen. Beggars belief. I think this is actually the smoking gun that MDC-CCC as Zanupf Team B in all but name. There are more evidence. One of the biggest indication of an opposition that has lost direction is the fact that MDC-CCC failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU. They had the opportunity to implement reform. They failed to implement even one reform. Not one. And ever since the GNU, they've been conning people to participate in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they'll give Zanupf legitimacy. Chamisa in 2018 and 2023 lied to the people. He is the one who told them that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes to stop Zanupf rigging the elections. He knew he was lying because Zanupf went on to blatantly rig those elections. One of the problems we have had with Zimbabweans is that they refuse to see the facts. It's now 2 years down the line since the 2023 elections, but you'll be surprised how many Zimbabweans out there still refuse to accept that Chamisa lied. It's absurd. Here is Chamisa claiming that he was going to win the 2023 elections.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan yaMwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
There is one occasion where he was taken to task for lying. And it is a very rare occasion.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza nawo akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza nawo akomana.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election,
but
$15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Trump
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
The truth of the matter is, MDC Triple C were elected by the people of Zimbabwe this last 25 years for the purposes that they would implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop Zanupf rigging the elections. They failed to implement even one token reform, including during the 5 years of the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so. This is a historic fact. Why? The truth, the whole story will come with time. But there is sufficient evidence to show that Mugabe bribed them during the GNU and they forgot about the reforms. And ever since, they've been conniving with Zanupf for the purposes of having a share in the spoils of power. This is the reality that while some people would want to pretend it's not there, this is the reality on the ground. It is utterly pointless pretending or coming up with far-fetched, irrational explanations, such as that they were too emotional to understand the importance of the smoking gun to prove that elections were rigged. They knew what they were doing, and that is the truth. And the worst thing is, Chamisa and company are gearing to con people to participate in 2028 to give vote rigging Zanupf legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. The worst thing that the people of Zimbabwe can do is participate in 2028 elections and perpetuate the dictatorship. To be unforgivable. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.